Hello, everyone. My name is Wanjiru Moreithi of WINENJIRU Exclusives, and welcome to the Conversations with WINENJIRU. Today, I'm honored to have my good friend and former classmate, actually, we're in the same class. He's a wino turned management consultant. I'm not sure why he did that, right? Because most people get into management consulting and then get into wine later. But you break many rules and you'll tell us about them. But welcome, Tom Magara. Karibu sana, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Wenju, and thank you to your team for this lovely set. You wouldn't know this is actually my cellar at home. No, actually, it's just...
Well, if Bothaika Country Club is your home, then we are at home indeed, and thank you for hosting us here. I mean, I know I met you, I saw you the other day, but it has been a long time, and this has been a long time in coming. But then we met in a class of 11 people. We were at University of Cape Town Graduate School of Business.
Wow.
What are the chances of having two Kenyans there? Do you remember that day?
I do remember it. It was so overwhelming because even me being there, I was wondering, am I the right person to be there? I'm so young. Who are all these other professionals? Then I see you. So, yeah, so clear what you wanted to do, even though you knew nothing about wine.
I knew nothing. You were the veteran wine person, the veteran University of Cape Town student. I was the one groping in the dark, but there we were.
Yeah.
So you made it difficult for me to quit the course. Because now I'm like, I'm the second Kenyan. I don't want to give Kenyans a bad rap.
Thank you.
Okay. But then you tell me that was your fourth course with University of Cape Town. How does that happen, Tom?
Well, first of all, it wasn't all me. I think I'd first have to just thank my parents. They had the capability and also were willing to sort of take me out of the country. So I took that opportunity and went down to study. And I went there I didn't know what I wanted to study. I did a year of converting our 844 system to their system. And then I got into actuarial science because my scores apparently said I could do it. I'd never heard of actuarial science. To this day, I'm not sure what it is. But so I started with actuarial science. The statistics were quite hectic. I didn't put in as much time as I should have, which I guess that was on me. But I failed a couple of statistics courses.
Hard to believe.
I know, right? And at that time, it was the end of the world. Everything was failing. And then I moved to economics, which I think I found more sort of enjoyable. And within that transition, I fell into love with wine, and I did a couple of sort of interesting wine things. And fast forward, finished my undergrad, did my master's, and then now I was trying to figure out what to do next with my life, which was to do a postgraduate diploma in management studies.
In wine management, wine business and management, yes. I mean, you can imagine for someone like me to come into class and find winemakers, I think my hope had been that was going to teach me really a lot about wine, but then I realized it was like another business degree meant for wine people who did not have a business degree. So that was my third sort of qualification in business, and it was rough, I guess, at the beginning, because I honestly, the first day, I was like, it's done. I'm quitting, but I'm glad I stayed on because it's been quite an interesting journey, and the connections we made there. I mean, Chris Ford, who was one of our classmates, then came to do some work with DGB in Kenya. There's been interesting happenings with everybody who was in the class.
Actually met one of our former classmates.
Yes.
Jacques.
Jacques, yes.
He's moved to Oak Valley or Oak Valley.
Oh.
And we were there with my wife to do a sort of master class with the winemaker, and he was like,
No
Tom,
way.
Magara, you're here.
Wow.
It was 2 months ago, so yeah.
So was he the one doing the class?
Yeah,
oh,
and he's
lovely.
the winemaker there now. He's taking the wine brand elsewhere.
Wow.
So it's very interesting sort of where our connections
have gone, yes. Because even Francois, who used to be at Asara, I mean, I talk about Francois all the time because in one of those, I think the class usually was 10 days, was it? One of those after class sort of, few days to decompress before coming back to Nairobi because I had moved back, Francois was working at Asara. And he took me on a cellar tour. And I thought that's what every wine tour is about, even though I had been to some before. But literally spent hours and getting me, like barrel tastings and everything. And knowing what I know now, that was really, really special. I got a chance to thank him. When we're doing the Cap Classic tasting last year, he's now at Leliud. Yes, he's now at Leliud. And then he came on the call, actually. And of course, I related to him this story, and then of course he gave us, contribution about Leliud, especially on the Cap Classic side. So yes, very, very great people we had in that class, and I'm glad I was a part of that. I know now our friend Spencer is a lecturer
Oh, yes, I
on
saw
the
that.
course, as well as Maktume Mbata, who's of course the Wines of South Africa market manager. Maybe we will go back as lecturers too.
I think so.
Yeah?
I mean, you've learned so much about this industry. You can tell so much about Africa wine drinking and starting businesses and successfully running them.
I sure have a lot to tell. I sure have a lot to tell. But then now, before UCT, where were you at? I mean, clearly underage. But then, has wine always been an interest of yours, despite the fact that, of course, being in Cape Town may have accelerated it?
Very good question. So I think, again, we'll go to my parents.
Okay.
They would drink sort of wine at home, and that was sort of my interest, or well, let's say, beginning into wine.
Yes.
Very European, you would think, because that's often how they start their
true.
wine journey. And for me, I think, again, fortunate enough to go for a family holiday to Cape Town in 1999. I think I was about 11.
Wow.
And parents were going around doing wine tasting. Of course, it looked so exciting. It was nice to be there. And something that at least my parents didn't say, no, you can't sort of be involved in this. Like, drinking was something that they spoke about. Of course, they did it very responsibly, and they weren't sort of trying to make us, believe any things about alcohol. But they allowed me to just taste a bit of the wine when we were there at 11 years old. I'd love to tell you that sparked the interest. I fell in love. That never turned back. The strange reality, which I'm not sure what the medical reason was, but I began nosebleeding after just a small taste.
No way.
It was, so I had to now go and sleep in the car because for some reason, the
Terrible.
first reaction. But I think that was my first taste of it.
Okay.
Then growing up, they would drink wine, and I think being sort of young teenagers, I wouldn't say the age, but certainly not too old. At that point, you were going out and drinking, and we were young, we were broke, and we just enjoyed sort of alcohol. So you'd be going for the things that will get you sort of to feel that excitement at the cheapest price.
The cheapest price, yeah.
None of them ever tasted good.
Okay.
So when I would get to taste my parents' sort of wine at home, they'd give me a small bit to taste. This actually was something that I enjoyed. This is something that wasn't burning me. I never got enough to even get a buzz or anything, but it wasn't terrible. So I think that was my first interaction with wine, and that sort of normalized wine to some extent to me.
Yes.
Cut to Cape Town, going there, and it was very readily available. Now I was 18, young people away from the household for the first time, overly excited, but still broke. So we would buy your 5 liters of No Name, which is your sort of generic brand that's done by a supermarket.
Yes, I think it was Pick and Pay.
Yeah, Pick and Pay, and it was sweet like you could not imagine, but it was dirt cheap. A 5 liter for maybe 300 Kenya shillings. You're a big group of 7 people. It made financial sense. So that's sort of my second interaction with wine, and then. The story will take long.
I love it. Tell us. We have water.
Let's take a sip. The university, UCT, has a wine and culture society.
Oh, I love it.
The culture part is because the students add the subscription fee to their annual billing that gets sent to the parents.
Okay.
And if the parents see wine society, they'll be like, no.
Okay, so it's actually an extracurricular sort of.
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's a big. When I was there, it was about 600 people.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot, and those are the people who formally sign in the beginning of the year. And then throughout the year, you'd have events every Friday where different winemakers or distributors come to the university for a tasting, and you bring your friends, the people hanging around. So the numbers could go up to even over 1,000.
Okay, wow.
So I signed up for that, and it was my first sort of formal tasting.
Okay.
They weren't very serious because it's a bunch of students who have paid 5 rand, which at the time maybe was 35 Kenya shillings. to have a tasting on a Friday evening.
Wow.
And there'd be sort of bread, I'll call it French bread, that sort of long
The
bread.
baguette,
The
yes.
baguette, yeah, sorry. And also Greek yogurt to sort of soak up at the end. But it was a fun way to jumpstart your evening.
Yes.
And very interactive. Loads of people you've never known, come with your friends, always a good fun. So I joined it. I couldn't taste anything that they were saying, oh, this, that. But I got to meet the ones who were running it, the president and the sort of executive committee, and we became very good friends. So from that, I loved sort of the idea and culture of wine,
Oh, nice.
meeting together, talking about wines that we don't really understand, and that got me involved in wine, and the next year I ran that society. So
already, like as a first-year student?
That was my, I think, second
year or something.
Yeah, or
Wow.
something, yeah. So that's sort of now when I got into wine seriously.
A Kenyan heading a wine society in a wine country.
Wine and culture.
Wine and culture, I love it. I mean, this is a big lesson in choose where you go to school, right? Because, the only extracurricular activities I had at University of Nairobi, I think that are worth talking about from my time, other than, say, the marketing society, which was more the professional association for the course I was doing, was really ISEC. At least we got international travel, but I would have loved to have a chance to have, wine and culture on that someone else is paying for. And I would kill to pay 5 rand for a tasting today with such kind of connections. And 600 is a large community, actually. So very lucky. I hope you sorted out your nose bleeding problem. But then I must say, because I know your parents and your family has hosted us, of course, on numerous occasions, I never quite got around the fact that I could drink with my parents. Even as an adult today, I had a really difficult time the first time, like you invited us, and we're sitting around the table and even your parents getting involved in our wine circle. That was like culture shock in a sense. And even today, I'm like, that's a special family that way. But then I can see the passion across and how it's so easy then that you were able to absorb the culture completely. But I can tell you, it's not happening in our household right now. But then we love that about it. And I remember the particular story about one of the tastings. I don't know whether it was you hosting or it was your parents hosting, that had a bottle of a wine from Springfontein. And your dad had literally written the tasting notes along the label. And it was like Zimbabwean winemaker, Tariro Masiati. I think, I don't know whether he had fallen in the estate or something, but there was a note about some slight accident that happened. But just from that note, on Instagram, I got to contact Tariro. And it's somebody I've learned so much from, and eventually we got to visit Springfontein as well. So, those little things about exposure or being in the right place, and, a certain conversation that leads to, really people meeting, and, he's doing all these great things with Pinotage, and I think I did an Instagram live with him and his wife around Pinotage. That's really one of my most favorites, yeah? So it's amazing what things can come up out of that. And I'm sure because of you and the wine society thing now, you even became a judge. Can you tell us about wine judging?
Well, I think even before you
even
go there.
before there. Okay, let's go back. Okay, please tell the full story.
No, because you've mentioned exposure, and sort of I started off saying it was very European of me to get my wine introduction through my parents.
Yes.
That I think that exposure is so important. Coming sort of from traditional African culture where people would drink away from the parents, you wouldn't sort of talk with your parents about wine. I think it's I even know it's strange to say all the things I'm saying and to see the journey that I came in, but I think I was infinitely blessed because my parents were sort of willing to have those engagements and willing to sort of treat drinking as not something that, is forbidden and something that's behind there, and yet we as sort of parents can participate but never do this. But it was more realistic that, look, alcohol can be quite sort of, it has affected people in very negative ways.
Exactly.
And you really have to be responsible when you drink it, but it's a pastime that we as a culture seem to enjoy.
Yes.
So let's not try and act as if you're not doing it when you're doing it, but be responsible and never do anything that would be dangerous. So, that sort of upbringing of being able to do this with my parents was great. The funny thing is, you'll ask my parents as to where they got their love for wine. They'll claim it's me.
No. No.
because they would drink wine, but they weren't serious about it.
Oh, really?
Now, when I went to university, I had that connection of wine. I was getting into the wine industry. And when they'd come to see me, they had gone, as I said, even in 1999
Yes.
for wine tastings, but they weren't very serious about it. For me, it was sort of a fun way for us to connect and plan out places that they'd never been and sort of try and go to the ones that I knew were too expensive for me to go alone. And that sort of, I think, back and forth of us is what got to make us sort of a one family of wine. So they'll claim it's me, it's certainly them, but that was like a two-way relationship that we had.
That is so profound because, I mean, you were exposed to it before, but it had more meaning now that you were involved in the business.
Exactly.
And now it could become a more serious pastime.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Notes to myself as a parent.
So now to the wine judging.
Yes.
I think at that point, when I was running the Wine Culture Society, it was exciting, but I knew there was a lot I didn't know. I think wine is very humbling in that.
You had to put that word in there.
And that I think the more you learn about it, more you realize you just don't know that much. And there's various ways of learning about it. You need to taste, you need to read, and you need to meet people who know. And that became obvious to me. So I signed up to the Cape Wine Academy in South Africa.
Nice.
And they do sort of introductory courses, which are just to get people excited about wine. And then I think there's another level before that, and then you go into a diploma. So I started getting onto that sort of journey because it's fun. You go into a room meeting, again, like-minded people who are into wine. You're learning about your passion, and then you just sort of find you need to learn more and more. While doing that, I had a friend who he used to be in the committee the year before me, and he had a brother who was very big in the wine industry at that point in Cape Town.
Wow, okay.
So I'd seen him around, people would talk about him, and I'd just see him sort of floating in rooms and be like, wow, I want to be that guy. So one day I walked up to him at a tasting and I was like, Andrew, my name is Tom. I go to university with your brother William. I want to know what you do. I want to sort of learn how you do what you do. Can you please give me pointers? Is there anything I can do? Like, how can I be you? And he told me, okay, that's interesting. Next week, Monday, there's a tasting at there's a hotel in Cape Town called the Wineyard Hotel that has Monday tastings and then also a retailer who has tastings every day.
Wow.
So he told me, come next week, Monday. We're going to be going for a tasting. It's at this time. We'll start there. So, next Monday came. I was there early, dressed well, trying to remember all the tasting notes I'd remembered. And we had a tasting at it was at a hotel. Sort of producers come or their agents to just take people through their range. And he was very sort of accessible,
Wow, yeah.
He tasted wines, he would reflect what he was. He was black, everyone else was white. And when he'd speak, people were listening to him because he wasn't just saying the buzzwords and stuff like that. He was critiquing the wine, he was trying to understand what was going for, and he also wasn't trying to make it about him. He was listening to what was being said, and then when they asked, or he'd sort of whisper to me, hey, this is what I'm tasting.
Okay, wow.
And he became my first mentor. So he was a wine judge at that point. He'd also done, I think, an accounting degree or something, so not wine-related, but he'd studied at Stellenbosch University, and he'd run the wine society in Stellenbosch, which is a much bigger in terms of wine society than ours, but university-wise, it can't come close to UCT. But so he was judging, he was helping people set up wine lists on restaurants. He was even running his own business, and he sort of took me under his wing, and he got me to taste a lot of wines with him. And he also got me into judging. So he was judging on certain different levels. He was, he'd done a judging course. So he was certified and he was being paid good money. And he just threw me a bone and said, look, there's a small tasting. Let's go with you. I think you'd be a good sort of associate taster, which is sort of like a beginner taster, or was it panelist? Yeah, associate taster. And then that started it. I just fell in love with it, tasting 50 to 100 wines in a sitting. Tasting. I know it was a difficult life. The challenge was, you're tasting so many wines that at
Yes.
some point you're new, they all taste the same. You're required to give them a score. You're required to say why you give it that score, but it just all tastes the same.
Yeah.
But the good thing is that you're there with other trained tasters, very experienced palates, and you slowly start picking up what they like and why they like it and what they think is a good wine and what that sort of constitutes a good wine, and that sort of comes into you.
Yes.
So that, with my sort of courses I was doing, meant that I was loving it. I was always available for any opportunity.
Love it.
I started climbing the ranks, became sort of a panelist by my own right, not just an associate. So my word was sort of being taken. And I think one day I tasted 100 odd wines in the morning from like 8 till 10. And then I went to another judging event that I had from, I think it was maybe 11 to 1, another 100 wines. So, the struggles. It was the funnest day, one of the funnest days of my life. But the thing they don't tell you, though, is the acidity on your teeth. My teeth were aching, they were stained red. You're not so, I mean, if you've tasted that many wines, you shouldn't brush your teeth for at least maybe a day or two, because they're so sensitive when you're brushing
You're
it.
brushing them after the fact.
After the fact, you're just sort of removing your enamel. So anyway, that's how I got into tasting, and yeah, very long stories.
No, I love it. I love it. And I mean, really just painting the picture. You know, people think this work is glamorous, right? And you're saying, oh, yeah, I went to this two tastings. And I remember during the UCT course we did, I think the one Monday we tasted 100 wines, right? I never wanted to taste wine again. I know by lunchtime, I was like, it's red, it's white. And I mean, we were drinking water, we were having crackers, but like, I'm like, and we're supposed to do an exam at 7 p.m., right? I don't even know how we passed that exam, because I was done. I was done with everything, right? I mean, if I doubted that I wanted to do the course before on that Monday, I was totally done. And I know we went to some fancy restaurant after that.
Balthazar.
And there was like amazing wines on offer, but I was like, just give me water. So I know judging isn't for me.
Yeah.
I'm a lightweight. And I know even here in Kenya, there was a time there was someone opening up a restaurant and they wanted to get feedback on wines, and they wanted to do 50 in one evening. I categorically told them, I will taste number 1 to 20. I'm done. I will give you feedback for those 20. If you want me to come another day to do 20 to 20, and 20 to 40, then I'll do that. And then I will leave and I'll come back. It's like, know yourself, right? And then even, I mean, the joke about brushing your teeth, right? So it's not just after, but they say like even before.
So before...
Even before, you shouldn't brush your teeth, you shouldn't shower.
That may have been one specific person that was pushing that agenda.
Like really, I mean, you need, like the plug helps protect your teeth if you don't brush your teeth coming to a tasting, right?
Yeah. No, it's actually, no, it's terrible. You see sort of winemakers, well, my definition of a really good winemaker, which of course is biased, but
Yes.
is look at their teeth. If they anyway look British, that is a good winemaker.
Oh, okay.
Because the amount of sort of acidity that is in wine, and red or white, and it just sort of rips out your enamel, it's an occupational hazard that people don't talk about.
Don't talk about enough.
When I became a wine judge, I was told that there's this toothpaste you need to get.
Wow.
The only place I could get it, even in South Africa, was in Germany. And I had to ask a friend to bring it when they were coming back. And on this one small little toothpaste, it had 15 different places, all in German. So I asked my friend to sort of translate, saying, do not swallow.
Oh my
Do
goodness.
not swallow.
Okay.
So it's a toothpaste that you're supposed to use, I think, once a week, and it covers your mouth in a special kind of maybe enamel to protect them. But that's the only thing that can help with the sort of soreness. Because to this day, my teeth are not still back to normal, because it's just really brutal. And yeah, you can't brush your teeth before because it will affect the taste.
Yeah.
Or you brush early, then
Very
you sort
early
of
on,
eat
yeah.
something. But then that night after tasting,
Don't you
brush.
dare.
And even the next morning, don't do it. Maybe sort of towards the end of the next day. So, yeah.
Occupational hazard, protect your teeth. If you're dating a winemaker who has bad breath, it's part of the job. They will make up for their sins in wine, right? Yeah. But it's so crazy that really, I mean, people People think it's glamorous, right? And I mean, I'm sure there's some glam to it. You know, we look good holding glasses and the like. But it isn't easy at all. Let's not even talk about the occupational hazard of, you know, the fact that some people are quite dependent on the alcohol too. But wow, so kudos to you and your judging, you and Spencer and all the rest of them. I will stick to teaching, and even then, I tell you, it's like I have to pace myself, and I have to prepare myself mentally for we're gonna be tasting 20 wines today. And people think, you know, I have class tomorrow, I'm not drinking, and they're like, are you serious? Or even wine shows. My first wine show, I walked the floor. I suffered. Now I go to the wine show, and I go to classes. The class will have 6 wines. I'll sit there for an hour. Then I'll wait for the afternoon class for 6 wines. Nobody else. If I walk the floor, I'm just saying hi. I'm not tasting anything, you know. But that's just me, right? No. Wow. So what does it take to be a judge, though? Okay. Yeah. Over and above the whole, and I mean, you've talked about like associate, panelist. What do those mean? But I know from experience, from our wine circle, I think you have the most lovely descriptors. You know, the first one I had the word inky. And so many more I can't remember right now. But then, yeah, from Tom, you won't hear the normal, you know, run-of-the-mill names. You'll hear some ridiculous term that it'll just be apt for the description you require for that wine. So I know you're a super taster.
Far too kind.
Sorry?
You're far too kind.
Far too kind. No, I'm calling a spade what it is. Yeah, I'll have to look for something to call inky at some point during this discussion.
Fair enough. Well, I think the thing that I learned from my first mentor, well, I had that mentor, Andrew Chingorimbo, and then also Winnie Bowman, who was, or still is, a judge even for Platter's Guide. You have to taste as often as frequently as you can, because that's the only way to, I think, understand even a region, understand a country, so that you can sort of get an understanding of what sort of a good wine of theirs is. Yeah. And then also for comparison, you know, if you've never tasted an exceptional wine, you can never sort of understand how great a real good wine is. So that's sort of rule number 1. And also rule number 2 is just write your tasting notes.
Copious amounts of notes.
Yes. I know it looks very sort of pompous or maybe antisocial when you're there with someone with a book writing nowadays on your phone, but I think the only way to make sure you're keeping yourself accountable of what you're tasting is to write notes, and then you'll revisit that wine a week from now, 2 months from now, even 3 years, and you'll be able to sort of go back and see what you thought about the wine and see how it's changed. Yeah. And the notes don't have to be sort of, I think you teach very professional ways of tasting, you know, looking at the clarity, this, which is great.
The fruits, the flowers, the herbs.
I think that's the best way to sort of learn about doing it. And then once you get that ingrained in you, then you now just choose and pick whatever works for you and whatever that wine is telling you. So if it's inky to you. If it's medium plus, it's medium plus to you. And that sort of took a lot of time, even with myself and Andrew at that point. Like, we would get a free day and we'd go out to wine farms and just taste. Wow. Yeah. At that time, there was a website that was called Winefly, run by some friends of ours, where they were trying to sort of create a community of individuals who would log in every wine farm that they went to.
Wow.
So,
like Strava with runners, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, Andrew was, of course, called Brewmaster, was of course #1. He'd gone to leaderboard, obscure places all over South Africa. I think I was in top 10 or just out of top 10, over 200 wine farms, and it would look, now on that page, it would look exciting that, you know, we're just traveling around the world, all around Cape Town, tasting. But the reality was, we would set out very early, and because we were on a budget, we would either create or make sandwiches to carry, because also we had limited finances. And then we would be going to sort of far out regions, and we knew we didn't have enough money to sort of spend the night. So we would need to be very efficient with our tasting. And we would start off, we go to a wine farm. The first person says they just want one tasting. Whether they were charging or not, it was more about efficiency. Yes. So wine would be poured in that glass. The person would smell, taste, spit out, pass the glass, write the notes. The next person is doing that. They're pouring the next wine. And it was so, like, if you came with us and you weren't into it, it was very boring, because we were just getting it in and getting it out. We would discuss about the wine, but by the time the last wine is being tasted by the last person, the first person has paid
The bill.
the bill and is running to the car so we could go.
Wow.
But it was any free time we had, you had to go out and taste, and that's the only way
That's
to
the
know
only way
wine.
to do it, yeah.
I think how else to get into judging. I think nowadays, well, in South Africa at least, I think there are more courses that are being taught about judging. Internationally, we know about the wine master, the WSET that you're running here.
Yes.
You know, those are formal classes that teach someone how to train, how to taste wine, and then I think it's also just luck. You know, I happened to be with Drew Mastra. He took me to one of these tastings. One of the head tasters in that panel was Winnie Bowman. She sort of liked me, and then she took me around to other tastings. So it's, yeah, people who just take, who are very kind. And I think in this industry, we often find there's a lot of people who are willing to support others.
To support others, definitely. And I mean, even in a place like this where there's no wine farms to go to, or I mean, you know, there's Leleshwa, but there's not really others. I think there's an opportunity for us to have tastings in that sense. And I think the organization we had that was very informal, like a wine circle, tasting over different themes, and agreeing or disagreeing with, you know, whatever it was quite a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a social, of course, engagement, but it exposed me to things I wouldn't have been before because someone always had something obscure, no matter what the theme was.
True.
And some themes really did not work at all, like Italian whites. Oh my goodness. The Italian whites day was so bad. Was so bad. Maybe it was the variety available in the country or whatever it was, but that was like a big fail. But I mean, you always learn something new. And there's some wines, of course, I remember that, like I said, I tasted during one of those tastings. So maybe we should have more of those. And even, you know,
I think so.
you want to judge in the sommelier competition we did before. I mean, that's an opportunity as well to test ourselves. But we really do need a lot more of those. Granted, the people who live in the winelands can do it every day if they want to, and they have access and more networks. But I think we can actually build to that level as well.
No, I agree. I think, that those sort of informal groups, or can even be formal, really help, because if you're going to spend, you know, be it 6,000 on a bottle of wine, you at times, you know, if you spend 6,000, another person spends 6,000, and you're 5 people, you know, that's 30,000 that you couldn't afford by yourself.
Exactly, by yourself.
So if you pull that together, that's 30,000 of tasting. You've got in your glass, so, well, I think when you're really into wine, even just a tasting is good enough. And you get even now your bonds as individuals, you know, you become close. We grew much closer.
Oh, definitely.
El Capitan and Madame Chair and Diane and all those people. So it was...
And to think on average, we had 10 bottles on an evening. That was, it was quite a lot. It was quite a lot. I missed those days. But then again, even I remember, I guess this is my first, I guess my most opulent tasting ever was in the Dubai airport. And I think I was on my way to do the educator course in the UK. So I was actually, to me, it made sense because it was study.
Investment.
It was investment study, even though I almost missed the flight, right? And at the, is it Le Clos? I think, I'm not sure what terminal it is, but then it's a wine shop within the airport terminal. And you can actually get a tastings of the first growths. So you pay $100, and I think you get 30 ml of 5 wines, right? So basically it's literally 30. You've paid, it's a tasting. It's literally, they take it to literally though. And of course that was great, right? There's no spitting a lot at all after that. But then because you've paid for that, then they give you tastings of, say, other sort of normal priced wines. I mean, they're still premium and stuff I wouldn't have tasted before, but then I could do that. And that is how, of course, I learned that if I ever do that again, I need to go like 12 hours before and stay there for the requisite amount of time and not miss my flight, because I was literally running to the flight. But what was so good about, I couldn't even take any more alcohol on the flight after that, because I wanted to savor every moment of the ones I had tasted. But then, I mean, so that experience can be brought here. I know you've had events here, and maybe getting into your role, the role you'll play here at Muthaiga Country Club as a member. But you're also on those two committees. What did you call them?
So I'm on the House Wine and Messing Committee.
Okay.
This is sort of the committee that's charged with helping the management team here just think through the members' experience.
Okay.
So be it in the rooms, be it outside in the grounds, and all members, not just sort of the paying members, their children and all
Oh,
that.
wow, okay.
And just making sure, the experience here is something that makes sense for them and makes them come back.
Okay, great.
So it's one of those thankless jobs, which well, there's
I'm sure your members worship the choices you make.
we can only hope.
Yes.
Yeah, I know it's just a group of people who are passionate about the club
Okay.
and who hopefully have some expertise that can be lent to the club. And therefore are trying to make the club better in any way that they can.
Awesome.
So I was fortunate enough to be asked to join after meeting the team and sort of them seeing my credentials in the wine industry that I'd had. And they asked me to sort of lead the subcommittee in wine. So
Specifically in wine. So
specifically
within
in
the
wines.
bigger committee, there's a smaller one. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. So that people in the main committee were looking at the food, others projects, others grounds, housekeeping, all that.
Okay.
But yeah, now my focus is sort of wines and beverages, which I think has been very fun.
Wow.
We're very fortunate to have our resident sommelier, Mr. Vincent.
Yes.
I think he's remarkable. I think he's very sharp. He's exciting, and he brought a level of excitement and energy that you would not have seen in the club before.
Okay.
Because I think sommeliers in Kenya is still. You are seeing a few, but I think there are few establishments that one sort of give them the latitude to make the decisions that have an actual impact. And two, will even sort of support their education and invest in them because, that's how they become better. They need to train with WSET, of course, and they need that sort of level of exposure that would allow them to bring an international experience here,
Okay.
Particularly if they haven't ever left the country or they've
Yes.
never even been able to go to some of the restaurants we are trying to emulate here. Yeah.
It's lovely. And I remember Vincent from the WSET class, and he was already working here. But the change in his, in his outlook and, the responsibility he's been given is very remarkable. Well done. And even just that for Muthaiga to recognize that it's important to give someone the title, and of course the responsibility and authority as well. Because we know in a lot of establishments, it's really just you're still kind of by operations, not necessarily really making decisions about the wine, or it's still centrally procured somewhere where you have no influence at all.
Yeah. No, I think on that I'd have to, we have many committees. So our, I think, main committee that sort of is elected and is charged with making big decisions for the club. And that, I think they've given us a lot of responsibility to be able to be custodians of this and be able to work with the management. And even our chairman within our house wine messing committee, I think, has given a lot of latitude to the management team as well. And our food and beverage manager here is also willing to listen and works quite closely with Vincent. So I think the whole Muthaiga Country Club is very, I think has given a lot of latitude for us to be able to expand with this. And lastly, just not to forget anyone, is our importers or the distributors as well. The suppliers. I think you made a comment as to the sort of types of wines we had access to in Kenya. Even back then, many years when I was in Cape Town, I was always very impressed as to how international our wine exposure was here. The same wine that you'd find would be, first of all, you could find it much accessibly here, and if you found it in South Africa, it was way more expensive, of course, being a wine-producing country. So some things that we benefited from is that we opened up, and also I think the value. Our importers were bringing in some very interesting wine. We would think they're expensive. Everyone wants to pay as little as possible.
Exactly.
But when you consider sort of some of the prices that are being paid for these wines internationally, I think they were reasonable and we got a lot of exposure. So the wines we have to play with now, especially in 2022, it's exciting, and the importers have really upped their game. So I think we also have a lot of wine to play around with and to expose our members to.
It's lovely, actually. Sometimes I find of course, there's great South African wines, but then here you have choices
Yeah.
and there's always something new. And I think one of the events I actually attended here previously was like a Paris judgment thing, right? Where we were pitting French wines against South African wines. Very, very cool stuff that happens over here. But then, over and above that, first, we're glad you came back home. Finally left Cape Town, though I know you still travel there very often. How else are you involved with the ecosystem? And what are you doing now, in essence, in using your talents? Let me say that. How are you using your talents now in the ecosystem?
I was right about to ask you to invite me to all these fun things that you do. Clearly, my life is not as exciting. Yeah, I think I moved back to Kenya because I, at that point, was expecting I had gotten a job in South Africa and I was coming to apply for my visa to move back.
Okay, like a work permit.
Like a work permit. And my idea was to sort of spend my office hours doing my formal job, which is management consulting, and every evening and every weekend sort of out in the wine farms trying to, just grow and continue with the judging that I was doing at that point.
Eating more than sandwiches.
Eating more than sandwiches. Oh, wow.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. Management consultant needs to eat more than sandwiches. Okay, go ahead.
So I sort of moved back with the idea of going, but as life would have it, that sort of didn't pan out, the work permit. And I was doing a couple of odd wine jobs here. I was a sommelier at a restaurant for...
I remember that.
I felt bad being called a sommelier, first of all, because I hadn't been formally trained. I had also been in judging groups with a lot of sommeliers back in Cape Town, and I knew the rigor that they went through, so I felt cheated, sort of walking up to clients and trying to tell them, but I guess in Kenya at that point we didn't have many sort of people who had been trained, be it in wine or anything, so I guess I fit the bill, and I enjoyed elements of it. I think it was fun engaging with clients, fun sort of when clients come and allow you to navigate the wine world, or to help them navigate the wine world. So from a price point, what are they willing to pay, and then also the style of wine that they want. I think it can be quite fun because, I mean, that's my job or a job of someone.
Yeah.
Because, you have whatever job you're doing and you can't be tasting all day. So I did that for some time. It was fun from that aspect, but the hours, which is why I really respect Vincent, it's just also very backbreaking. You have to come for your lunch service, and depending on the restaurant, it closes after midnight or what. So you've been standing that whole time, speaking to people. It takes a lot, and the knowledge of also not just wine, the beverages was a lot.
Yes, was a lot as well, yeah.
So I left that and briefly also went to a supermarket where I was supposed to help them I was the director of wine for just 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
I know, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Not long enough. And I was doing sort of tastings at different places.
Yeah.
But then I sort of was approaching 30. I was looking around, seeing my friends not living in their houses. My then girlfriend, now wife, and parents are in sort of, the ones paying for things. And it just felt, I just felt as if, as a man approaching 30, I didn't see why I was sort of trying this hard to get wine to work for me.
Okay.
And I was fortunate enough to have other sort of degrees that I could hopefully try and fall back on. So I did for me, what was the right choice, which was now I switched.
Okay.
I went back into management consulting. I got a job in management consulting, and you always hope when you get your job that, look, this is my 9 to 5, and then afterwards you can run around doing what you want, but that wasn't the case. So
Okay.
I focused on work. I think work demanded a lot for me, and I left the active interaction in wine. And I think even on that, while I was still in Cape Town, my eldest brother had created for me a wine website called Kenya Wines.
Oh, yes. You used to blog about it, yes.
Yeah, so I was still sort of blogging at that point, but now when work became serious, that stopped.
You stopped it, yeah.
So for a few years, I wasn't doing much in wine, but through our tasting circles, got to meet some very good friends of ours. And when they sort of looked at my past experience in wine, also was able to assist them on doing some tastings and sort of, just help them out in terms of where I could. They asked me to be a director on the company, the wine importing company. Which is Under the Influence, which is the first one, and I think we have some bottles of theirs.
I think
The Lomarins and also the Procera gin.
Procera gin, okay.
And yeah, I think it's been fun. So it's something that I, whenever I have time, Diane always asks me to do some tastings, and we also chat a bit about sort of what their organization is doing, and it's been fun to have that connection with them.
With them, yeah.
So love that, and I think more recently, also through a friend of mine, our mutual friend.
Our mutual friend, yes.
Do you just know everyone I know?
I don't know, it's a small circle.
It's a small circle.
Oh, we are really good people.
Must be that.
We are really good people.
I became also a director in the company called Wineyard East Africa, also bringing wines from South Africa at this point, but looking to broaden. And that's where we have the Professor Black from Warwick and also the Neil Ellis Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay.
So that's my connection.
Great. So importing, after all that judging and all, is there anything else? Perhaps production soon?
You know too much. I think, through sort of the interactions we had in Cape Town, introduced sort of the family to my parents to a winemaker that I'd gone to see, and we just sort of connected very well. She is, her name still is Catherine Marshall.
Nice.
She was one of the first women winemakers in South Africa. And the parents just really got along with her. They became good friends, and also an opportunity came to sort of join the Catherine Marshall Wines brand and sort of be able to try and assist, be it from an intellectual perspective, bringing wines in. So, I think that's also within the family something that we
Something that's coming.
Yeah, that's coming.
I mean, I'm trying to think back to when you were 11 years. Not, of course, with hindsight now, but you can imagine what that journey has been to where we are now. And we are happy for it. We are really happy for it and are so proud of you for doing all that.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm sure it can only get better. This conversation is quite long. I'm sure we will not finish it today, but I want to give you an opportunity just to give us a parting shot. You've been involved heavily in South Africa, you have a good understanding. You're back here now serving on the business side. What do you think are the big opportunities that are coming up for anybody in the wines and spirits space? If you were to advise them in your management consulting, wearing your management consulting hat. Yeah, just to wrap us off nicely and give us some appetite for the next one.
Well, I think, first of all, you're in the right space. I think the education space still has so much to do. I think people are very hungry for knowledge. People are very hungry for the culture, the experience. So I think someone who's bringing in that knowledge, be it certified like you are, no one else is doing that, but then also just informal. I think there's a big space of that, and we are seeing people spending a lot of money on tastings. I still think on the importing side, there's still a lot more that can be done.
Can be done as well.
I think this market is so big, and there are various different sort of levels, so there's enough for all of us to collaborate. I don't think there's any point of stepping on anyone's toes. We've just gotten excited about gin now. I think on the wine space, there's so many countries, styles, so that seems to be exciting. And I guess if someone has the money, also setting up a sort of experience, so be it the tasting that you're talking about, be it food, when you own it, you sort of have a lot more control.
Lot more control, exactly.
And I think we're hungry for those experiences. I think we watch the whole world doing the tastings, exploring the world, and we want to have that experience too. And it doesn't have to cost a flight. I think we have great ingredients here. We have great knowledgeable people here. And the wines that we have access to, beverages, are also world-class. So I think there's more we can create and have fun with it.
Wow. We can see why you're a management consultant because of the rich content that you have provided for us. And I like that you can actually switch between, understand the wine business and sort of business as well. And thank you for giving us those insights into your journey. I think you're one of the only people I've met who have that story. So I'm really, really privileged that you are here on the show. And thank you for being so generous with information. Like I said, this is not the end. We'll call this episode 1, and we'll come back for more news on the production side, for example, and of course, wish you all the best in the endeavors you're doing now with your investment in the 2 companies. There you have it. You can be a wino and turn into a management consultant, and hopefully you can metamorphosize back into the wine business. Tom Magara, thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you, WINENJIRU. This was fun. Thank you for your time.
It was fun.